It's the Security Weekly News, episode 315. I'm Doug White, and it is Friday, the 4th of August, 2023. We got Midnight Blizzard, Citrix, Bloodhound, Five Eyes, Canon, Cult of the Dead Cow, AI Shopping, Aaran Leyland, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
Why does multi-factor authentication have to be a pain for users? It doesn't. Beyond Identity is the most secure MFA on the market and the easiest to use. They ensure that every authentication is multi-factor by default, with phishing-resistant factors that secure access from the start. Beyond Identity safeguards organizations from breaches, data loss, and fraud by eliminating weak phishable authentication factors like OTP and SMS push codes. Go to securityweekly.com/beyondidentity to get a free demo. That's securityweekly.com/beyondidentity to get a free demo today. Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the trusted browser for security-conscious professionals like you. Its ease of use for IT and security teams and added access controls protect the remote, extended, and hybrid workforce, keeping your entire enterprise safe. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome Enterprise now to learn more and start protecting your enterprise like never before. All right, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Well, on Wednesday, Microsoft announced that they had caught a known Russian government-linked hacking group that was using Teams to phish for credentials at targeted organizations. The Redmond Threat Intelligence Team said that the actor in this case was called Midnight Blizzard, or maybe Blizzard, I don't know, Midnight Blizzard, who had previously been known as Nobelium, which is Atomic Element 102, by the way. I was trying to figure out if there's a weird, I always do this thing with numbers. It's like I just can't, why is Rick's house number, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But anyway, so Midnight Blizzard had been linked to the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. Microsoft went on to warn that the group is using previously hacked Microsoft 365 accounts that are owned by small businesses, and then they use that account to create a new domain that appears to be some kind of tech support. I mean, we've probably all seen these sort of things. But the attacker then sends lures attempting to steal credentials from the target organizations by engaging a user and getting them to approve the multi-factor authorization. They said they trace the targeting to less than 40 unique global organizations, which suggests a very targeted cyber espionage operation that seems to be focused on U.S. and European targets. The domains have security or product name theme keywords, and then they create a new subdomain underneath that. So they're, this is basically a kind of standard phishing approach, but they're very targeted. So once they get the credentials, and I note they didn't say if they obtain them, they're just like, once they get them, and I mean, we all know somebody's going to click that link, right? I mean, but basically what happens is they basically start trying to get other people in your or the specific organization to click the links, give them the multi-factor authentication keys, and then they can extract information. And in some of the cases, they tried to add a device to the organization as a managed device via Microsoft Entra ID, which is what they now call Azure Active Directory. This could be an attempt to circumvent the conditional access policies in that tool that restrict access to managed devices and so forth. So, I mean, basically, that's how you want to plant a device in that organization that can then communicate with all the other devices. What's with all the renaming things anyway? I mean, it's like pharmaceuticals here. I mean, ask your doctor if Blorgentarian is right for you, previously known as Shmulamentra. Caution, may cause vomiting, explosive diarrhea, loss of hair, seizures, and memory loss or death. Wait, I think that's what's on the bottle of gin I was drinking last night, but, regardless. Bloodhound is a tool which probably you're familiar with, which builds graph-based maps of your Active Directory relationships that was developed by SpecterOps. It's a pretty popular tool and has been around a while. A lot of pen testers use it. A lot of attackers use it. A lot of insiders use it. But, it basically allows you to discover all the paths through your Active Directory network and, of course, create attack vectors that way. The community edition is free, so a lot of students use it. And of course, it's open source, so people have used it to bolt onto other tools and so forth. So it's popular. Well, SpecterOps announced that they will be releasing version 5.0 on the 8th of August. So if you're using Bloodhound, it would be a good time to start thinking about that update. The original Bloodhound came out way back in 2016, and they also released Bloodhound Enterprise in 2019, which was more focused on blue teaming. But I remember trying to set this thing up way back, like in 2016, 2017, and it was really hard to get it working. So I gave it as an assignment to the students and told them that they would be failed in my class if they didn't get it done before I came back from lunch. And oh, by the way, go get my lunch. But, well, actually not really. But that's how it kind of went in my head. I think the Cyber Club worked on it, and we set it up in some other environments to test. But I guess this new version maps the community and enterprise versions to the same code base, which is smart. And that would certainly be a plus if you're testing community editions and thinking about buying the other one, because I always hate it when there's like a community edition and you test it and you get it working and then you recommend it to somebody and they're like, this is a piece of junk. It doesn't work the way we expected. They also apparently added a lot of user management stuff, multi-factor stuff, SAML support. So maybe it's time for another look at this if you aren't using it already, or if you are using it already, it's probably time to look at updating it. So there you go. According to this story, hundreds of Citrix, NetScaler, ADC, and gateway servers have been breached by attackers deploying web shells, according to the Shadow Server Foundation. The nonprofit Shadow Server Foundation said the attacks are using a critical code injection vulnerability that could allow unauthenticated remote code execution. Always what you want to hear. The flaw was patched last month by Citrix and has a severity score of 9.8. So, pretty bad. The largest number of impacted IP addresses are in Germany, followed by France, Switzerland, Italy, Sweden, Spain, Japan, China, Austria, and Brazil. That's a weird collection of things. Strange. Anyway, CISA had reported on this vulnerability. They said the attack was directed against an unnamed critical infrastructure organization in June of this year. Gray Noise said that they had detected 3 specific IP addresses that were attempting to exploit another flaw in Citrix share file software, which is a different CVE that has a score of 9.1. So all these things have been patched in your Citrix environment. So if you've not patched them, now would be a really good time to do so, because as we all know, and in the next story, I'm going to tell you more about that, but as we all know, once these things become common knowledge and they're out in public, they very quickly become exploits that are being used in the wild. So in this other study, the most frequently exploited vulnerabilities in 2022 were not the 0-day that they found yesterday, but older bugs and high-profile flaws in major products. And I mean, as you can guess, this makes total sense to me, because it's like, if I'm going to attack something and I find that there's an old 0-day that's out there that's well documented, has a proof of concept and so forth, why not use that if it will work? The report resulted in a new advisory from Five Eyes Governments, which is a multi-agency group that consists of, if you've never heard of Five Eyes, it's the U.S., the U.K., Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. So these are government entities that work together to disseminate and share information. Most of the compromises that they found were from vulnerabilities in 2021 or even 2020, rather than any new CVEs in 2022. I mean, it just totally makes sense to me, because, everyone patches vulnerabilities right after they're discovered and patched, right? Right? Anyone? Bueller? Okay, so I'm not naive either, so it does make sense. I mean, we don't always get to patch everything we want when we want to patch it, and so sometimes these things fall through the cracks, or sometimes they just don't get patched. Half of the most popular vulnerabilities that were being used were remote code execution, because why wouldn't you use remote code execution? I mean, do you see RCE vulnerabilities and go, well, let's call it a night, folks, and we'll just jump on that whenever we get back on Tuesday? I mean, I don't want to do that, but we all have to acknowledge that the real world exists. And so I am somewhat sympathetic, because we've all been in that circumstance where they're going, well, feel free to stay and fix this, or you could go home, but we're not paying overtime. And you go, okay, see you Tuesday. But the oldest vulnerability listed in their top 12 was from 2018 and was that SSL VPN bug in FortiOS and FortiGuard. So people haven't even patched that one yet. I mean, it's still sitting out there. And of course, patching FortiOS and FortiGuard stuff is production. It's difficult to patch. And, every time you say, can we take the whole company down for the weekend while we patch? And somebody says, do that next weekend. This weekend's not good. Other stuff that was there was proxy shell bugs in Exchange, Atlassian Confluence, Log4Shell, and of course all these big ones that you probably have heard the name of. But every time I read these stories, and I'm going, wow, they didn't patch that. How about that? And of course, once these proof of concepts are out there, they facilitate people getting hit with these because, a proof of concept can mean that a complex attack that's difficult to execute can turn it into almost a script kiddie attack over time. So, if you go look at your logs at your border, you'll see people probing for these old vulnerabilities all day long. So I guess if you can't patch everything with proof of priorities of proof of concept ones, then age, I don't know, respect the severity. You definitely need a plan for this, and you definitely need to start focusing on your patching plans. But if nothing else, patch what you can and do it as quickly as you can, please. Well, Canon posted a warning this week that when third parties take control of a printer, which could be a repair, or it's on loan, or it's being resold, or even just somebody connecting to it from across the street through Wi-Fi, or you're disposing of it, and we've all disposed of printers because, it's just one of those things. There is a possibility that your user information may get exposed, and a lot of people don't think about this with printers. And of course, if that user information is exposed, it can increase your vulnerability to other malicious activities, particularly phishing. I never really thought about putting anything good in a printer, but then I started thinking about the modern printers, like these IoT type printers that we all have now, and it really made me get a bit nervous even at my house. Mine's on your printer almost has to be on your main network so you can print to it, although they do have these cloud-based functions now that we've been experimenting with. But they want you to register the printer, okay. They want your name, they want your address, they want your credit card number because, they want it. And I don't have a Canon printer, but some of the other brands that I know of have, automatic ink resupply. And, somebody asked me about that a couple of weeks ago and said, is that dangerous? And I was like, well, you've got personal information in there, so yeah. And so basically those printers have started talking to the home office and saying, hey, you can set me up so that whenever you need ink, I just request it. Whenever you need, even paper or anything else, they just may file a request. So I guess like anything else, you should probably add this to your wiping policy and your security policy before you do anything with a new printer that you put in your network, because as we all know, these kind of third party component vulnerabilities can end up being a vector that someone can get in your network. So if they can connect to that Wi-Fi printer, and of course printers have default passwords, they have all kinds of features that are accessible via the internet. Canon did provide instructions on this in this article. And the instructions are pretty reasonable, so you could actually send them out to just people in general. Because, think about, once again, these remote workers at home have got a printer. That printer gets compromised. That means a person can get on the local network. Maybe they can, who knows what they can do. But if you're going to dispose of a printer, be sure you wipe it as well. Most people don't think of printers as a vector, but I always really have. They have an antenna. They have default credentials. Nobody thinks about them. It's a perfect gateway. But this stuff can be used for phishing attacks as well. All phisher people love free info, so watch out. Phylum identified some, quote, test packages on the 31st of July in NPM repositories, and they said that while they weren't really sure of the end goal of the campaign, that those test packages were pulled down right after they found them and then put back up with more exciting sounding names. They went ahead and said it appeared to be a highly targeted campaign that was aimed at cryptocurrency security based on the references to modules like Rocket Refer and Binarium, which are both cryptocurrency modules. The packages were published by NPM user Malik Rookd 4732. They said the common feature in all the modules was the ability to launch JavaScript that's equipped to exfiltrate valuable information to a remote command and control. It gathers the operating system username and the working directory and then issues a request and to send the collected data to 186.62.57.60 on port 8000 using HTTP. The script then looks for files and directories which have specific extensions, which is probably a search for credentials or other valuable data files, and all that gets bundled into a zip file. They said this thing was running on an endless loop, though, so that maybe the home office was waiting for this username, operating system, home directory information to come in so that they could decide which ones of these machines were worth their time to explore. Reversing Labs had already exposed 13 other rogue NPN modules back in July that had been downloaded around 1,000 times. I mean, none of this is new. This is stuff that's been going on as long as there have been these online repositories. But I think my point is you probably need to be careful about controlling these kind of downloads from those repositories and be exploring that. Definitely want to be watching it, because all these source code repositories have been used as starting points for malicious code since people were posting on dial-up bulletin boards back in the 80s and probably even in the 70s. So, think about this kind of threat and how you are mitigating it, because it is a real threat. Anybody can access this stuff, and if you've got users in your, even if it's in the marketing department and they say, ooh, here's something cool, and they download it, next thing you know, you got a big problem. Well, next week is B-Sides Black Hat and DEF CON in Las Vegas, if you're lucky enough to have a sponsor to send you. And an oldie but a goodie, the Cult of the Dead Cow is back. So the Cult of the Dead Cow has apparently developed a coding framework which could be used by app developers willing to use strong encryption and give up ad revenues like, say, Signal or Tor. The latest effort that they put together is, and they promise that they're going to detail this at DEF CON next week, but they said that they want to provide a foundation for messaging, file sharing, or social networking apps without harvesting any data, and that it's secured by end-to-end encryption. The product that they're going to release is called Veiled, not Veil ID, which is how it's spelled, but Veiled, and it can be used to develop mobile apps and web-based apps. There's a big demand for these kind of things, but it's a really tough sell because it's very difficult to monetize, and that means that when people do develop things along these lines, they don't necessarily have the marketing base to get it to the general public. That talk, along with a technical workshop and a party, apparently, will be on the opening day of DEF CON next week. Now, I will tell you, Cult of the Dead Cow also developed Back Orifice back in the day, which was another supposed useful tool that ended up having backdoors in it. I'm not running down Cult of the Dead Cow. They built all kinds of cool stuff, and Back Orifice was a really nice thing, but it did happen to have a backdoor built into it. The last time I went to see them speak was at the Alexis Park Hotel, so that was probably like in 2003 or 4, and they came out and threw raw meat on the crowd. So, hey, it could be an interesting session. Well, I'm in the basement mixing up the medicine, and he's on the pavement talking about the government. It is Aaran Leyland, and his name is spelled correctly in my version anyway. Hi, Aaron. Oh, you have the book?
Yeah, I got it signed at DEF CON a couple of years ago. It was really nice. And weirdly enough, Back Orifice is what got me into this sort of lifestyle. But unfortunately, to our listeners, DEF CON's cancelled, so there's no point going.
Yeah, I know. I heard that. It's so sad, and you might as well just stay home.
Well, we have to stay home, but anyway, we're not going to moan about it until next time that we're on air.
Indeed.
Okay, right. So hackers have exploited Salesforce 0-day in Facebook phishing attack. So they've exploited a 0-day vulnerability in Salesforce's email services and SMTP servers to launch a sophisticated phishing campaign targeting what they call valuable Facebook business accounts. You probably see this all over Facebook, people getting their accounts pwned and sending you spurious messages. But the attackers chained a flaw dubbed Fish Force, see what they did there, to bypass Salesforce's sender verification safeguards and apparently quirks, whatever they are, bugs I'd probably call it, in Facebook's web games platform to mass send phishing emails. Go Facebook. The benefit, obviously, of using a reputable email gateway like Salesforce to distribute phishing emails is just to evade secure email gateways and filtering rules, and to ensure that the malicious emails get through. Really good work here by Guardio Labs analysts Oleg Zaytez and Nati Tal, sorry if I killed your names there, who reported the previously unknown vulnerability to Salesforce and helped them with the remediation process. Great work, guys. So at the time of publishing, the discovered issues in Facebook's game platform are still outstanding, as Meta's engineers are still trying to figure out why the existing mitigations failed to stop the attacks. Possibly they're struggling to pull engineers out of the metaverse, but joking, obviously. So the Salesforce CRM, customer relationship management tool, allows customers to send emails as their own brand using custom domains that the platform must first verify. This apparently protects customers from sending out emails through Salesforce as other brands that do not have permission to impersonate. Guardio Labs says the attackers figured out a way to exploit Salesforce's email to case feature, which organizations use for converting incoming customer emails to actionable tickets to support teams. Very nicely, they provided some screenshots on this, so I'm going to try and show them to you, but if you can't see them, it's not wholly important because I'm going to talk about it anyway. So specifically, the attackers set up a new email to case flow to gain control of Salesforce generated email addresses, then create a new inbound email address on the salesforce.com domain. And hopefully you can see that on the screen, sort of circled in red. And then on from there, they set the address as an organization-wide email address, which Salesforce's mass mailer gateway uses for outbound emails, and finally went through the verification process to confirm ownership of the domain. And if you can see that, it just they're both highlighted in red there. This process allowed them to use their Salesforce email address to send out messages to anyone bypassing both Salesforce's verification protections and any other email filters and anti-phishing systems in place. If we move on, this is actually an email that Guardio Labs observed in the wild. And if you look at it on the left here and the right, it supposedly came from Meta platforms using the case.salesforce.com domain. So clicking on the embedded button takes the victim to a phishing page, hosted and displayed as part of the Facebook gaming platform. I'll be able to show you a bit of a tell on the next slide on that, but that's under apps.facebook.com, which obviously adds further legitimacy to the attack and makes it even harder for the email recipients to realize the fraud. Let's move on one here, and just what I was talking about. So the goal of the phishing kit employed in this campaign is to steal Facebook account credentials, even featuring a two-factor authentication bypassing mechanism. A tell on this, because they've went through a really old games app, but I think was like deprecated in 2020. On the top right-hand corner, you can actually see it weirdly connects to Football Soccer Manager and shows some related games on the right-hand side. Okay. The interesting stuff. As we can see here, you have the attacker on the left going through the SMTP mass mailer, going through Salesforce, looking like it's sort of Meta Facebook app, a malicious iframe, and then onto the games, and then very easily account hacked. I'm sure it's not quite as easy as that, but still pretty cool all the same. After confirming the issues by replicating the creation of a Salesforce-branded address capable of disseminating phishing emails, Guardio Labs notified the vendor of their discovery June 28. Salesforce reproduced the vulnerability and resolved the problem a month later. And regarding the abuse of apps.facebook.com, Guardio Labs notes that it should be impossible for the attackers to create the game canvas using as a landing page since Facebook retired this platform in July 2020. They go on to say that legacy accounts that used the platform before its depreciation still have access, and threat actors are probably spending a fortune buying them up on the dark web. Go dark web. Meta removed the violating pages upon Guardio Labs' report. However, its engineers are still investigating why existing protections failed to stop the attack. As phishing actors continue to explore every potential abuse opportunity on legitimate service providers, novel security gaps constantly threaten to expose us users, everyone, to severe risks. So not only do we have to contend with Nigerian princes wanting to give us lots of money, we have to check on emails that look like official emails. That's so hard. It's then essential not to rely solely on email protection solutions, and also scrutinize every email that lands on your inbox, look for inconsistencies, and double check all claims made in those messages. Good luck getting that across to your users to spot, because it's hard enough for professionals too. And there we are. Back to you in the studio, Dr. Doug, who I'm sure would never phish you, at least not without permission or asking.
Yeah, we just phish people to get them registered for the university without their knowledge. So
that sounds like a good tactic.
I think it would work. Yeah, you just send them out an acceptance letter. Like, yeah, don't do that. That would be bad. But yeah, exactly. Thanks, Aaron. And finally, a Japanese supermarket is not just putting up weird ads for fish-flavored soda in your shopping cart, but has now enlisted the help of AI to watch what you do and when you do it when you shop, so the AI can suggest more products for you to buy. I mean, if you buy 6 fish-flavored sodas, why not try new Mountain Dew prawn flavor? I mean, why not? I mean, for that sunny, fresh taste of a really hot day in Appalachia, lots of sugar and caffeine, but now in prawn form. I mean, the AI apparently watches customers via camera as they linger at a display. Should I try new Colon Blow or stick with the traditional Platzarama? I don't know. But the system apparently watches to see how you respond to store content, what you're looking at, where you're looking, and so forth. And a long time ago, my friend Lou did a whole bunch of work on this kind of stuff with these massive big data apps, trying to find out, like, are there patterns to people's behavior in shopping? And one of the things he's widely credited with was the legendary marketing plan to place diapers next to beer. I'm not kidding. They found that there was a huge correlation between people running into stores late at night and buying diapers that they'd run out of and saying, hey, why not get hammered at the same time? But the system is in the Aruk Midajiri supermarket in Hofu, and one of my favorite foreign activities and least favorite domestic activities is grocery shopping. I mean, I really like doing that. But, you know, hey, what could go wrong with AI supervising it? Read The Space Merchants from 1952, or maybe even just reread Player Piano if you haven't read that one in a while. Well, that's the news. Thanks, Aaran Leyland. We will be back next week with the Security Weekly News. See you then.